It's my, the blue hens.
That is good. Got it. We ready? All right. Good evening, folks from our community. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Always nice to see a lot of faces in the audience. Given the state of the national sort of sense of what's going on, particularly the violence that's been going on, I feel compelled as a mayor to read a statement, and I will end by asking for a moment of silence. Just over a year ago, in response to the assassination attempt on President Trump, I was quoted in the St. Louis Star as follows: "Rather than accepting a culture of violence as inevitable, we have to envision a community at peace with itself, one where the dignity of each individual is affirmed and all human life is cherished. Only reverence can restrain violence, reverence for the bond of our very humanity. Once again, in the face of unspeakable acts of violence in our country, we are compelled to stand united against violence, with a deep resolve against the divisions that threaten our peace and our safety. These acts of violence, regardless of their origin or motivation, remind us of the urgent need to foster dialogue rooted in respect, understanding, and civility. Our community's strength lies in its ability to listen to one another, to honor every human life, and to work tirelessly towards healing and justice. Let us observe a moment of silence with the hope that we can be inspired to bridge our divides and renew our commitment to peace, justice, mutual respect, and basic human dignity. Let this moment be a call to action for all of us, leaders and citizens alike, to reject hatred and violence, protect the fundamental rights of free expression and safety, and build a future where everyone can live without fear of harm for who they are and what they say." Let's just take a few seconds to quiet ourselves in a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you for indulging me. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Doring.
Here.
Vice Mayor Deasy. Here. Councilmember Barrick.
Here.
Spataroto. Here. Summers.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And why don't you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay, moving on to item 4 on our agenda, adoption of the agenda. I'll look to our clerks and ask if there are any agenda updates or additions or subtractions from our agenda.
There are none.
All right, then, seeing no changes, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor of adopting the agenda as is, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That motion passes. On to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from our regular city council meeting of September 9 and our special city council meeting of September 16th. That was a study session. Unless there are any changes or corrections, I'll look for a motion to adopt or to approve our minutes, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adopt our minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That motion passes unanimously. On to item 6, public forum. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public forum. Each person's comment shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas. But in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. So I'm going to take the time to open public comment and invite anyone to speak for 4 minutes on anything that is not on our current agenda. Please, welcome.
Hello, my name, hi council members.
Welcome.
My name is Michelle Covell, and I live in town for the past 10 years. I sent in a couple public comments. It's on the agenda. I hope you guys had enough time to take a look at it because I sent it in last week. I have not really prepared anything tonight specifically, but what I wanted to talk about is that the second comment about with the general plan, it was the chapter on community design. And I think if you read it, if everyone, we spent a lot of time and effort in putting the general plan together, and there's a lot of important information in there. And I really hope everybody takes a little bit of time to digest that chapter and in conjunction with my statement number 1. The study session I was really hoping for was more dialogue, and what I'm a little hesitant about is that it wasn't really a study session. It seemed like another meeting, and everybody only got 4 minutes, and I don't think we really resolved anything. I think the purpose in the agenda item, sorry, also I'm speaking as a resident, not as my role as planning commissioner. I just want to state that there's a lot of change, and I hope that the plans that I submitted are sparking some conversation with everybody, because that Adam Street site, when I look at it and I think about the city hall that could be there and the spaces overlooking Mount St. Helena and reminding us why we live here, and it's really a space for everybody in the public to enjoy. And for me, the idea of it just kind of solving a revenue problem that is not the only problem that we face in this town, as you see in that document that I wrote in Statement 1. So I included community design because I really think it's important, and there was a lot of information in there. And so that's all I ask. I don't need to use all the 4 minutes, but I just hope we can be creative, and I'm really looking forward to that financial commission, the financial committee's outlook on our budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Covell. I did receive your comments. I think we all did, and I did review them. Thank you for those. Others? Mr. Smithers.
That's right, Mark Smithers, Vallejo Street. Good evening. I just have a little something that I wanted to, I guess, mention. I don't know if it's on the radar screen of the city council or even the staff, and the light bulb actually just went off for me the other day when I was reading the agenda item that had to do with the housing on Spring Street, and then I got to thinking, and there's a lot of developer fee money coming down the pipeline if, if the 2 places on Spring Street, those projects go in, Railroad Avenue housing, over on Mills Lane, and the Hunter project, and developer fees are paid when they pull the permit. So it's not like you have to wait for the project to get, finished and completed 2 and 3 years down the road. So I just wanted to, I don't know if you're enlightened to this, but just looking at those projects broadly and a rough estimate of the total square footage of those 5 projects I just mentioned, we will receive civic improvement monies of $738,000. water impact fees of $625, sewer impact fees of $724, and $1,750,000 of park impact fees. And I don't know if I have this other number right. I pulled it off the master fee schedule. For housing impact would be almost $8 million. So I don't know if the city's thinking about any of these monies that are coming that would come due at the time the permit is pulled, and planning, what may we be doing with this? And I guess the side note to all this, with the housing that's going to be going in likely, we need a place for these people to go to parks. We can't give up all the property we own and then have no parks for these people to enjoy. So that's a side thing to consider. Where are the parks going to grow? And we are going to have a lot of park impact money and civic improvement money on top of the monies we have currently sitting in those funds. So I just thought I'd get it on your radar screen. You may want to even ask the staff to put something together and because within a couple, 2 or 3 years, you may have all these funds, and we haven't even talked about what we're going to do with it. Maybe we should start talking about what we're going to do with it and what would be best for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? All right. Any comments from my colleagues at this point? Close public comment, and we will move on. Thank you for the public comment. And folks are always invited to give comment orally or in writing. Try to read all of it. I don't always have the time to respond, but I do read all of the public comment in writing. All right. Looks like we're on to item 7, reports by staff, city council, future agenda items, AB 1234 reports. Mr. Mello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. One is on October 18th, we will be celebrating again or having our Harvest Festival in the city. This time it will be at the corner of Adams and Library Lane, as opposed to the historic or traditional place on Oak Avenue. I invite all residents to make a note of that and make sure you come and enjoy. Lots of fun things are being planned by staff. And the second has to do with our last meeting on Tuesday, the study session on sale of city properties primarily. During that meeting, I misspoke. There was a question asked or comments made about Farmstead, the hotel that was entitled by the city several years ago. We will be bringing an item to the council for possible extension, if that's necessary. But during the meeting, I said, I misspoke. Rather than saying the owner, Ted Hall, had gotten an equity partner, I said he had gotten financing. My mistake. So just to be clear, he has gotten an equity partner, which is good news. He has been there for a while, but he doesn't have financing for construction, just to be clear.
All right. Other staff reports, Mr. Camello? All right. I don't think we need to turn to our attorney. We did not have a closed session, thankfully. We have a number of closed sessions here. All right. Then on to, looks like we don't have presentations or public recognitions, 8. We don't have an additional staff briefing, 9. So we're on to the consent calendar. Members of the council or the public present at the meeting may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. Colleagues, any matters that you'd wish to pull for a further discussion? None.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent.
The motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion to adopt our consent calendar. There's a second. We'll do a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Barrick?
Yes.
Spataroto?
Yes.
Summers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy?
Yes.
And Mayor Doring.
Yes. Thank you for that. All right. Moving right along, we're on to public hearings. Item 11.1. This is entitled Closeout of State Community Development Block Grant, also known as CDBG agreements. Mr. Beltran, welcome. How are you?
I will stand here. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah.
Good night, Mayor and City Council members. So as part of the CDBG CDBG grant program, one of the requirements in order to fulfill one of the requirements is to fulfill a public hearing notice prior to submitting closeout documentation and paperwork. So next slide. So what we're doing tonight is we're going to receive a report summarizing the accomplishments performed under the following CDBG agreements. There's 3 different awards that have expired or are expiring. The last one, economic development, is expiring this month. First being the Child Care Scholarship Program. Second is a Utility Assistance Program. And then the third is a Business Assistant Program where we provided business loans. Next slide. So the first award is related to the St. Helena Child Care Scholarship Program. This was made possible as a response to back in March 27, 2020, Congress passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, to support preparation for and response to the community impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Overall, there was about $90 million available, and then this city was allocated $74,484. Through this award, the city partnered with Community Resources for Children, CRC, to administer and assist with the development of a child care scholarship program. Was successful. The full grant amount of $74,484 was successfully spent. And as a result, there were scholarships provided to 10 children from 8 different households. And that agreement award expired on June 25th of 2023. The second grant award was related to our utility assistance program. So back in December of 2020, the state of California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, announced availability of additional funding. So they considered this round 2 and round 3 CDBG-CV funds. And on November 12th, 2021, the city received notification of award of $200,000. And for this award, the city partnered with Up Valley Family Centers and established a program aimed to provide utility assistance to low to moderate income households impacted by the financial hardship as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Upper Valley Family Centers distributed a total of 1,218 outreach materials across various community touchpoints, tabling events, food banks, community presentations. They even did door-to-door outreach, and local businesses in City Hall also had some material available. So as a result of the outreach efforts, Up Valley Family Centers provided utility assistance to 73 households. They completed a total of 133 applications. However, not everyone submitted necessary documentation or was eligible for services. So as a result, we only expended $144,256 out of the $200,000 that we were awarded. So the remaining $55,744 that was not utilized will be disencumbered as our award expired on March 31st, 2025 for that specific award. The last award is related to economic development. It was a part of the NOFA that was released in 2020, 2021. The city partnered with Community Development Services to establish an over-the-counter grant application assistance related to business loans. So on September 19, 2022, the city received notification that they were awarded $500,000. The city provided 4 business loans, which resulted in 31 full-time jobs being created, 3 full-time positions being retained. And within that, the loan supported the creation of 621 weekly part-time work hours and a retention of 96 weekly part-time hours. Of the $500,000 of successful program, again, $490,000 was expended, and the remaining $10,000 that's not utilized will be disencumbered. And that is the agreement that expires this month, September 2025. So again, summarizing, part of the requirement through CDBG grants is to conduct a public hearing to solicit public input regarding expenditures and accomplishments of funding received under these CDBG contracts, and then direct staff to proceed with submitting any required documentations for grant closeout. So with that, that's my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
All right, let me take the time to open the public hearing and invite public comment on this matter. All right, let me close the public comment, bring it back to my colleagues. Not sure if we have any questions or comments, concerns about the item. Vice Mayor Deasy. Of course, yeah. I wasn't expecting a whole lot of comment on this, so back to you. Yeah. From others, at least. Yeah.
Really quick, thank you for the great presentation. It's wonderful. I was just out of curiosity, had two questions. The loans, I'm assuming, were forgiven. I was wondering about that, and I wondered if there was any information available on the 31 full-time jobs that were created, if that information is easily available.
So the loans were forgiven. As part of the jobs that were created,
Or do we know what industries, or is there just, I was just wondering if there was any color. It's okay if not.
yes, so we have, sorry, give me 1 second.
Sorry, I could have submitted that question in advance. I didn't think of it until now.
I don't have that right in front of me, but we do have the metrics as far as what percentage of the jobs were created for the low to moderate income level, and then what was the moderate. So there's very strict guidelines with CDBG and what these, who is going to benefit from the funds, but we do have the percentages. So we don't have it, we have it broken down by metrics and the percentage of the levels of income, but not personnel and so forth.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Comello.
These jobs are primarily retail positions, and they also tend to be, even before we apply, when we apply, we identify the kinds of businesses that might benefit. The goal, of course, of the program is to help businesses create jobs that meet a certain requirement by uplifting the entire community.
I guess the question that is formed in my mind is, are there any lessons learned? I know we left a little bit of money on the table. By my count, a little bit over $60,000, maybe a little bit more, but I'm not sure if we could have done better or we did the best we could, and maybe the application processes were a little daunting for some folks. Talk a little bit about that and to see whether we can make sure we don't leave any money on the table in the future.
No, that's a great question. We definitely advertise both from Upper Valley Family Centers and the city's front. Material and outreach was conducted. I think it really came down to some of the strict requirements for some of the grant, the end recipients, that they had to meet so strict requirements in order to be eligible for the program. So we really just kind of ran out of available applicants.
All right. I tend to go to the negative first, and that's not fair to you. Let me just tell you, the staff and you did an extraordinary job in a very difficult time. A lot of this was under COVID. The pandemic was daunting for all of us. And so I just want you to know that I recognize that. I mean, that's a lot of money, a lot of grants that we received, an extraordinary job for a very small town to make sure we received the money and distributed the money. Mr. Comello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we have been going aggressively after even loans, but certainly grants from federal, state, and local sources when possible. I often see a comparison between us and Calistoga. What is misunderstood is that Calistoga, in addition to CDBG grants, which are federal, Calistoga puts in their own money, general fund monies, which don't have these tight requirements that are put upon us by the federal government. So the flexibility in Calistoga comes from the monies that are not tied to CDBG grants.
All right. Well, I'm not sure exactly what direction you exactly need. I'm prepared to give you direction to do what you need to do to close out the accounts, right? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Any reservations or comments from anyone? All right. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. All right. We're on to another public hearing matter, 11.2. This is introduction and waive the first reading of an ordinance approving zoning ordinance amendment 25003 to amend chapters 1724050B1 and 17.32, definition of terms, visibility triangle of Title 17 of the St. Helena Municipal Code regarding vision triangle standards. There you are. Mr. Rosa, welcome.
Hello, Mayor, members of the City Council. Good evening. This item is something that you may know that we've actually been studying for the last year. I'm going to be sharing a couple of slides going through some of the background that's led to this zoning ordinance amendment recommendation. Please go to the next slide. But first, I'll start by framing what our current code standard is in our zoning code. So that graphic on the right basically shows you that we measure length from the intersection where two streets adjoin, and it's 35 feet on each side. And then we also have, in the picture you can see it's very common for people to grow vegetation in these vision triangles, and our code currently limits the maximum height to 2 feet. Now, adding a layer of confusion, we have, for a long time, have had this Public Works Standard number 324, which has said that the vision triangle length should be 25 feet. Next slide. So we actually, under the direction of City Manager Camello, decided to let's get an inventory of what is the situation of vision triangles in the city, who's complying, who's not, how many are out of compliance. So thanks to our wonderful fire department and also the assistance of our building official, Henry, we had a concerted, targeted effort in January of 2024 to survey. So they surveyed 299 street corners. 66 of those were found to be out of compliance with the zoning code standard, the one for the 35 feet and the maximum 2 feet. And then, so the city was very much trying to get property owners into compliance. So we released a pretty big marketing campaign in 2024 with newsletters and just announcements to folks about what this vision triangle is and what those standards are. So as we were thinking about what we might want to do if we do change the code, we looked at other cities such as Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Cotati. Attached to the staff report is a summary of what those other standards are for those particular cities. There was quite a lot of a range of what other cities thought was acceptable. A lot of them used 36 inches as the maximum height, and there was a little variation in the distance. And so to bring some of it into context to St. Helena, these are, again, some wonderful graphics from our fire department. We tested, what if we did go with a 25-foot length, and what would that look on some of our key corners? So this one here you may recognize at Spring and Oak Street at the Grace Episcopal Church. And so the red line shows, well, if we were to change the standard to 25 feet and raise it to 42 allowable height, it would comply. Here's another view, but this one is actually of the historic wall that shows the yellow line depicts if we were to hold the line literally at the 2 feet, that you would see that the historic wall would not comply. And this is a project, a wall off of Madrona, and as you can see, there's the 25 feet and the 42 inches would work, but the current standard is a challenge. So we took some of this feedback and findings to the Planning Commission, just had a general discussion with them in May 20th of this year. And there were some varying opinions, but generally we got consensus from them that they were supportive of us increasing the allowable height to 42 inches from the 2 feet. And also, there was support to reduce the length to 25 feet. So of course, these types of things you have to look at safety, right? Because that's the whole purpose of why we have these standards. So as we were working on this zoning ordinance amendment, the police department did not have any concerns with these changes, nor did the Public Works Department, and they had cited some Caltrans data that the line of sight for a driver is at 42 inches, and that should be like the highest that we should go. So the formal recommended changes as outlined in the attachment to your staff report will be to remove that 2 feet and increase that to the 42 inches for the maximum height. Next slide. And then also to, in the definitions of terms, to clarify that the length is 25 feet, not 35 feet. Next slide. And the definitions actually also has a visual graphic that we would update to the 25 feet as well. One thing that I think would be important for you all to know as you look at this, if we were to take the zoning code forward as amended, that would significantly reduce the number of out-of-compliant properties down to only 8. And then I also want to say that if you want a visual, the fire department actually has made a really nice poster of what the graduated sizes are of the 2 feet, 36 inches and 42, if that is helpful in the conversation. So the recommended action is to find the proposed changes to Chapter 1730 of the zoning code are exempt from CEQA, 1506 1B3, and to approve the zoning ordinance amendment as noted in your staff report. And so I'm available for questions. We actually have additional slides if you want to see the 8 outstanding items. That's in a different PDF, but we're here prepared to answer your questions. Thank you.
Any initial questions for clarifying purposes by my colleagues? See none, I'm going to open it for public comment. Anyone wishing to opine on this interesting matter? That, in my view, is a good response that actually benefits our community, is more practical, workable for our community, so therefore I support it. But I'll look to my colleagues. Any comments, questions, concerns? Mr. Barrick.
So I've been tracking this for some time. Back before I even decided to run for council, the city manager and I met and discussed this, and I was very pleased to see after the discussion, he put this on hold for further review. The Planning Commission did a great job. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch that session, I recommend it. It happened a month ago or so, I think. And the staff did a great job because what we're trying to target is those areas that are really a safety issue. And we all know what they are, right? Pratt and Maine, Spring and Madrona, we've all been there, and I think this gets the job done and doesn't affect the common residents on dead-end streets, et cetera, we're facing having to cut hedges, take out fences, take out stone walls. So thank you very much, in full support.
All right, excellent comments. Others? My colleagues, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I also wanted to say just thank you for
I'm
adjusting.
sorry, yeah, I didn't see where the voice was coming from.
Sorry, thank you
Nice
for
and easy. Thank
adjusting. I should have waited. Adjusting based on feedback. It's appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we're all in accordance with the direction, and I'll look for a motion to that end. It's right up there, the staff recommendation. Someone can just say move to support the staff recommendation, or more detail. Mr. Barrick, you can do what you want.
I will make a motion to adopt all of the staff recommendations.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a motion and a second, Madam Clerk, to adopt the staff's recommendation, introduce and waive the first reading of the proposed ordinance as stated up on our board here. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick?
Yes.
Spataroto?
Yes.
Summers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy?
Yes.
And Mayor Doring?
Yes. Thank you for the good work of our staff, and thank you for the comments from my colleagues. All right, now we're on to 13.2. Wait a minute. Nope, we're not. Let's see where we are. We're on to 13.1. All right, I moved ahead here a little bit. We are on to new business, Doesn't look like any old business as I see it. On to new business, 13.1, Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, RCAP, update and discussion. Mr. Mello, who's going to introduce the item?
Yes, I will.
Yes, you will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Well, this is the report by the Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan developed by the county, where the committee that's created a couple of years ago with representatives from every single jurisdiction in the county. Our jurisdiction is represented by Vice Mayor Deasy. And this report is a draft. We are receiving feedback. The committee is receiving feedback until this Friday. Each jurisdiction is going to be giving feedback, as well as they are collecting feedback, I should say, and they had a couple of regional meetings, one of them in Yountville, in the last few weeks. We will have a presentation here prepared by staff in collaboration with the City of Napa, where we work with City of Napa staff to represent us, our interests, and be the eyes and ears at these meetings. And we will also have a representative from the consultant group that prepared the report to make a quick presentation. Andrew?
All right.
Here's Deborah. Oh, Deborah.
While we're getting from that, I just want to acknowledge also that we have received written comments from Mr. Warner, Mr. Farmer, Mr. Cyverhale, and Ms. Benz. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Eric DeCock, Senior Project Director for the Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which is in draft form, and we're here to give you a brief overview tonight and to hear your feedback or questions or comments. Next slide, please, Clerk. So this Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, as our city manager was explaining earlier, is a product of regional collaboration. Our contract, my firm's contract, happens to be with the county, but of course this is a regional project. There's cost sharing on this, and it's part of the product of the joint powers agreement that you all entered into across the 6 jurisdictions in the region to prepare a long-range regional climate plan. The action part of the climate plan does provide that visionary roadmap to getting to carbon neutrality in the region as quickly as possible, but no later than 2045 in alignment with state laws and regulations and goals set by the state. It also provides you with a comprehensive regional strategy for adapting to the impacts of climate change, which you're already experiencing here in Napa County. So it is, again, a countywide strategy for both of those climate action objectives. Importantly, this regional plan really does build on the regional initiatives that are focused on sustainability and taking action on climate that you're already doing here in the region. So we want to really recognize that the city's efforts here, other cities in the region, the county's efforts collectively are being recognized, and sort of we're building on those in this plan and not trying to duplicate efforts or reinvent the wheel. Next slide, please. So why is this regional climate action and adaptation plan needed? Well, our climate crisis does require urgent action, and there's a nice little section in the introductory parts of the plan that explain the climate crisis in plain English terms to people, and it really can be narrowed down to key facts. It's real, it's really happening. We see that every day. It's us, and the greenhouse gas emissions that we're producing and releasing into the air as a global community. It's pretty bad. We have pretty specific and scientific agreement, that fourth circle on the map. But of course, the reason we're doing this plan is there's hope. If we can take action both locally and globally to be part of the solution to drive down emissions, get to carbon neutrality as quickly as possible, while also achieving our other livability or sustainability goals in our communities here in California, we can be part of that solution. And of course, California is leading the way, and there's a great opportunity to leverage and build on that momentum. Next slide, please. I did also want to highlight that this plan is about regional collaboration and partnership. You've all coordinated across the 6 jurisdictional lines here on a countywide basis, which is great. But we don't stop there. We first start with the community, the residents sitting here in this room that live in your community, that own homes, rent homes, own businesses, do business here in Napa County. They're all part of the solution. Everyone needs to work together on this. Of course, many other agencies and entities, whether it's the great leadership from MCE, which you're already a member of here, Napa San, other waste haulers, recyclers, Napa RCD, who does such great work in your landscapes and in your communities already, Cal Recycle, Cal Fire, the list goes on. I won't read every acronym and logo on the screen, but you get it. There's a lot of work to do to partner with and to collaborate. And this plan does reflect the measures that other people are already taking at other jurisdictional law, builds on those. And so we want to recognize that the plan really does focus on partnership and collaboration in many ways. Next slide, please. First, let's dive into the greenhouse gas mitigation strategy part of the plan. Next slide, clerk, please. I'll first just give an overview of the emissions inventory. A part of the greenhouse gas planning process is just understanding where our greenhouse gas or our carbon emissions actually come from. This graph on the screen shows how that breaks down by jurisdictional sources across the region, and the graph on the right shows what places they come from or what actual sources do they come from. You can see on the left side, the black and white pie chart, that the city of Napa by far is the largest emitter in the region at about 43%, and that's roughly proportional per population as well. The unincorporated county not too far behind at 31%. American Canyon, about 16%. Right here in St. Helena, you're about 5% of regional emissions, with the smaller communities just slightly far behind you, not too far behind you. In terms of the sectors where greenhouse gas or carbon emissions come from in the county, the predominant sources on-road transportation at about 40%, followed not too far behind by building energy, solid waste, and then in descending order, off-road equipment, agriculture, and wastewater and imported water. The next slide, please. We did a lot of quantitative analysis in this plan. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but just know that that kind of stacked bar on the left represents that baseline emissions year of 2019, with those individual different colored wedges of that bar showing where those emissions come from on a sector basis. And then we did some forecasting. We looked at what would happen if nobody does anything about carbon emissions out to 2045, and then what happens when we take stock of all the 82 measures in this plan that are designed to drive down emissions across all these sectors. And you can see that if we do nothing, there will be some reductions, but we definitely won't get to carbon neutrality unless we adopt a plan like this and begin taking action to implement the policies or the strategies in the plan. And the good news is that we
have
could...
that there, can I just interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
Does this chart assume, like at the end in 2045, that the previous work has been done? Because that would be the only way it would make sense to me. Does that make sense to you, that question?
A little bit, yeah. So some of the forecasting does take into account commitments that have been made statewide, and some of the activities we already see happening. And here, a good example of that is MCE is already drive downing the carbon, content in your power supply. So that's kind of factored into that.
Right.
And things like a vehicle emission standard. So those gray bars show that emissions will decline with some of the statewide or regional or mega regional work happening. And then when we factor in what's kind of quantified in this plan, we can get down to near carbon neutrality by 2045. What's not shown on the graph is, with some extra work out in the landscape, agriculture, open space, post-fire restoration, and ecological health of the region, we can actually get down to carbon neutrality, and that's really exciting news. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
So just the numbers quickly, there's approximately 21 strategies in the greenhouse gas part of the plan, about 46 measures, about 17 of them are quantifiable, and those are the big rocks that get you to hitting the goals here in the region across the sectors. There are many, many, many implementing actions. In other words, the steps we need to take to deliver on a policy or achieve a quantifiable target that we set in a measure. So just know that there's a lot of detail. If you've already cracked open and take a look at the plan, you know what I'm talking about. But this plan wouldn't really be implementable if we didn't specify exactly how we're going to achieve some of the quantifiable targets across these different emission sectors. So just know there's a lot of detail that's behind some of these projections and measures. Next slide, please. Just diving into the specific sectors of the plan and how we're driving down emissions in the different sectors, we start with building energy. And the first big thing is making sure that we're moving the communities across the region towards clean and efficient energy use in existing buildings. And of course, this means a lot of retrofitting work, as well as that second bullet, making sure that any buildings or development we build moving forward is as zero carbon or as close to it as possible over the next 20 to 30 years. And that's a pretty tall order. So what does it take to retrofit buildings? Well, it takes money, it takes education, it takes contractor readiness, permitting readiness. There's a lot of different things that are going to need to happen, and we need to create an ecosystem of change around retrofitting and basically getting natural gas out of buildings as quickly as we can. We know it won't happen fast. It'll take time. We have over 50,000 buildings across the 6 jurisdictions, most of which are kind of mixed fuel, gas, and electric buildings, right? So it will take time, it will be challenging, but we've got literally dozens of actions that are designed to help to move that needle and create the system that we need to change and move the needle. So anyway, there's a lot that we could talk through there, but I know the time is short, so we'll move us on to transportation. Next slide, please. In the transportation space, it's a mix of, yes, we need more electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles on the road. That's a big part of it. But what you have a lot of control over here is how much people drive, right? It's the development patterns you have. It's the kinds of mobility options people have. There's driving, of course. There's carpooling options, thinking about transit more in our developed parts of the region. And definitely making sure that at the local level, you don't have jurisdiction at the city council level over the emission standards of the vehicle people drive. But you do have the ability to set standards for charging, to help folks when they come in with projects or want to think about how to green up their parking lots, to definitely make charging available, to incentivize that. So there are measures in the plan that talk about local roles and helping to encourage the transition to zero-emission fleets and the cars that people drive every day. So there's a lot of work that can be done, as well as expanding options and choices for active transportation to really drive down those vehicle miles traveled. Next slide, please. Solid waste, really this is about promoting zero waste. We want to make sure we're diverting as much waste out of landfills as we can, especially the kind of waste that produces methane when it decomposes in the landfill. So the tricks of the trade here are things we already know about. Reducing how much waste we generate altogether, recycling it, finding productive uses for compost and that food waste, that green waste that can be composted and reused out in the community, whether it's in your garden, out on the farms, or other uses in public parks, for example. So promoting that zero waste mentality. And then, of course, we've put a lot of waste into landfills already. So there are landfill-specific technologies and programs, things like waste to energy and other kind of more efficient capture and destruction systems for methane at landfills, which are also part of the strategy. Next slide, please. In the water and wastewater sector, this is not a huge source of emissions. What I always been saying in all my presentations the last couple of months around this is water is important because we're going to need it. And we're going to live in a more water-constrained future in climate change. There are emission reductions we can get from more efficient use of water, but we actually really need to be thinking about ways to conserve, to think about native drought-tolerant landscaping, reducing methane emissions from treatment plants, and exploring recycled water opportunities, all which help you here in the region build water resilience while also driving down your emissions. Next slide, please. Here in Napa County, we know agriculture, open space, especially grape growing and wine production and tourism are central to your economy, and there's a lot that can be done in the ag and open space sector. Reducing fossil fuel use in your farming equipment, increasing how much carbon farming is happening out in the lands surrounding the communities. Increasing how much we're doing certifications in grape growing and vineyards is really important as well. There's a little bit of livestock here, probably not a huge source of emissions and a ton of benefit there, but there are some opportunities to think about sustainable livestock practices. Places like St. Helena, Napa, Calistoga, your urban or urbanized communities or developed communities, there's of course tree planting or things like community gardens, and that's an important part of the equation as well. And then out in the landscape, out in the more undeveloped places, up on the hillside, the North County, it is about accelerating woodlands and forest restoration and stewardship of those lands, especially the 60% of your county that's been burned by fire in the last 15 years or so. So there's a lot of work that can be done to come alongside the work that RCD is doing and other habitat management agencies as they rebuild and replant after the fires. Next, please. The other part of the plan, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I know the time is short and we'd love to get into comments and questions, but that climate adaptation part of the plan, like I mentioned earlier, climate change is already happening. You're feeling those effects. I just mentioned the fires here in the county. You're familiar with that. We did a deep vulnerability assessment to look at how climate change is affecting the county and who and what is vulnerable: people, infrastructure, your natural resources. So there was a good report done early in the project. And we developed climate adaptation and resilience strategies to really increase the resilience of the community in your lands to climate effects. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just walk you through quickly what we found and just verbally high level. There is a really important need to think how do we apply a climate lens to understanding climate change. We already have natural hazards. We've already been planning for that. Things like flood risk, fire risk, extreme heat, water shortages, and of course energy grid resilience. All these things, climate change is exacerbating some of the challenges we already know about. So how do we be more strategic in the long term of applying that climate lens and doing things maybe a little bit differently or more strategically to address potentially worsening risks? And what are the trade-offs for not addressing those risks? So things like wildfire risk reduction, it's both in the landscape as well as in the built environment, helping people that in the WUI or the WUI's edge think about home hardening, defensible space, and really important work like that. For the flood protection work, it is about kind of more modeling and that longer term work of understanding watershed behavior as climate change could result in more extreme rainfall events and more severe short-term flooding, as well, of course, more in the South County, the big scary concern about long-term sea level rise. And the sea levels are rising when we know that. We have data. So energy grid resilience, of course, a great example of a project here is that what's happening up in Calistoga and that really important energy project they did to create a microgrid. That's one of the leading projects in the country, and using that technology. And of course, there's an opportunity to scale up projects like that across the county where we can build energy grid resilience and keep the lights on when things don't go so well. Next slide, please. I'll close here. Well, 2 more slides. The most important part of the plan is the implementation. How are we actually going to do all this? We did a lot of work to talk with staff. We talked with some experts who understand cost estimation and looking at the vast array of funding and financing sources that can support climate action and adaptation. And we did find that some of these measures, of course, no brainer. It is expensive to try to retrofit every building in a county in 20 years, and that's no small feat. But that's got to be phased in. And not all that money is going to hit your local pocketbooks, not all general fund. It's going to have to be grants, financing sources, and things that you don't control, would never have the money for. But the idea is we create a funding and financing roadmap, and that is one of the first steps we need to take very soon as we're finalizing this plan and moving into the first phase of implementation, knowing what are the staffing needs, what's our financing roadmap, especially for the first 5 years, and then how do we begin to make those decisions in a coordinated way across jurisdictional lines. So that Climate Action Committee that a few of you already sit on, you'll be having those discussions there, and of course bringing some of that back to your elected bodies across the region as you think about how to adopt this plan and how to begin to make implementation decisions that affect the near term and your bottom lines. Some of those, I gotta say, I won't go into a full report out of the order of magnitude cost estimates that are done. They're pretty complex, but just know that that doesn't really represent even the full cost of plan implementation. It was really designed to give you a picture of probably what the 10 to 20 most effective measures could be for reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change, what that picture would even start to look like. And so it's meant to be illustrative and not precise. There may be 50% overestimated, maybe even much as 70% underestimated. We don't really know. But that's what an order of magnitude cost estimate is. But just to reiterate, we really would like to see a lot more work done with staff between now and when we bring the final plan back of getting more detail in this chapter. And we didn't want to get too much detail up front, frankly, because it wouldn't have been a bad use of the budget. We want to make sure we've had a vetted discussion about the measures. We want to come back with even more detail once we've made decisions on what needs to stay in the plan, what do we need to take out, and then we'll dive and do a deeper dive. So with that, that just closes off that piece. The last slide is about the next steps. That public comment period does close on September 30. We will be going through all public comments received and deciding with staff's help what to change in the plan, what to keep, where do we need to provide more detail, especially on the implementation, funding, and financing side, and then start to prepare a regional cap for consideration in the spring of next year. We are working on the CEQA analysis. That initial study preparation underway, the Climate Action Committee did approve funding for that, and we kicked that off in August, so we'll be presenting that publicly for public review probably at the very beginning of the year, maybe January, early February at the latest. Getting a public CEQA document out for a short review period before we move into final adoption, so you have CEQA coverage on the plan as well. That really concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
All right. I know my colleagues have much to say about the issue, but let me open it for public comment and invite public comment at this point. With Mr. Warner, I want to forewarn him that we have read all of your your information, and thank you for that. All right. I even read the legal citations, Mr. Warner. Thank you so much. Lawyers, get in the room. Watch out.
I will stay at 4 minutes.
No, thank you for your comments.
Cut me off.
Excellent.
And I'm Chris Warner, as you know, but my comments tonight are personal only, not in any official capacity, not representing any third party or entity. I want to say right off the bat, I appreciate the work on the draft recap plan done by the staff and consultants like Eric to the Climate Action Committee. I also appreciate that the members of the Climate Action Committee have prudently and wisely submitted the draft plan in its current form, even as incomplete as it is, for initial public comment before the committee formally reviews or acts on the draft plan. Obviously, that's also before jurisdictions act on it. In reviewing the draft plan, and I've read almost every page, that's what lawyers do, in my opinion, the draft plan is not ready for formal public comment or adoption. It's incomplete in important respects that you will know are important. Most importantly, it lacks benefit cost evaluations for each of its proposed mandatory measures and ordinances that would affect nearly every resident, homeowner, business, worker, visitor, agricultural entity, and city and town in Napa, with potentially billions of dollars of costs just to comply. Even the initial estimate, as Eric pointed out, of the costs just for St. Helena and Napa local governments to implement some, but not all, of the measures is 1.1 to 1.4 billion. That's a big price tag, and as he pointed out, that could be under by 70%. So you really need to get those benefit cost evaluations. I might just comment, in environmental regulation as well as government programs, benefit cost evaluation is a standard practice when you're doing a new program or new regulation, and it's standard in the climate plan area. You look at some kind of social cost of carbon that you assume, you compare it to the costs of compliance, and then you come up with a benefit cost evaluation. There is no benefit cost evaluation for any of these measures in the draft plan so far, and I hope that the further work will result in that. As Eric pointed out, the plan would require St. Helena and all Napa local governments to adopt and enforce over 40 separate new ordinances and regulations with no assured source of funding. I think that's something you need to think about, is how can you adopt a plan as a governmental entity without having the assured source of funding? And if you think you're going to get the feds to fund this or the state to fund it, I think you may be dreaming. So before you go forward to adopt it, it seems to me you ought to have the assured funding for the implementation, including your own implementation of the regulations. Now, there's just one example I want to cite with my time, and it's in my comments, but I think it's important, and that's the proposed building electrification mandatory ordinance. And if you're in real estate business, or if you own a home, or you want to buy or sell a home, this is important to really look at the devil in the details. This ordinance that would be adopted by every jurisdiction would require every single existing home, store, restaurant, hotel, school, office building, municipal building, and other residential and non-residential buildings in Napa, and I think the number is 91,000 residential and non-residential buildings in all, to be retrofitted to remove all gas appliances, to then rewire the building for electricity, and install all new electric appliances. The draft plan has no benefit cost evaluation for this new requirement, which would start as early as 2026. And the plan does say that it would cost $448 million in total to implement, but that cost estimate assumes that it only costs a homeowner $2,000 to $3,500 per home and building to replace all your gas appliances. That's not correct. Every estimate that I've reviewed, including from PG and others, and including here in Napa, are that it will cost $30,000 to $100,000 per home to retrofit. So I don't have time to go through all the other measures, but there are a lot of them. You do need to review those. I want to compliment, though, the Climate Action Committee, because the members are being very good at getting these ideas out, getting these proposals out for public comment, and then come back to the Climate Action Committee, work with staff, work with all of you to analyze them and provide an actual implementable, complete, financeable plan. and I'm happy to follow up, but my 4 minutes is up, and I don't get paid for any of this. So thank you so much.
I don't know if you had a chance to read some of the writing by Mr. Warner, but it makes me think about really how humbled I am about the talent in our community and folks who are willing to spend that amount of time on really important details that affect all of us. So thank you, Mr. Warner, and thank you for all of those who really weigh in on this. It just never ceases to amaze me. It's not because I'm biased towards lawyers, but whew, wow. All right. Others wishing to speak on this matter? We did get some other public comments that I announced earlier, in writing. But I'll go back to I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the council for items. I know that others want to talk, and I want to look to our committee representatives also because they have some more insight. Mr. Barrick, I'll go with you first. Thanks.
I appreciate we're all concerned about climate and what's going on in the world. I look at something like this with its mandates, and I'm reminded of what we're going to be talking about next, where we've centralized housing authority, and it seemed like such a great idea. But there's real cost to real people, and I'd be loath without some dedicated funding source that wasn't me or you. I'd be looking at this a lot more favorably. Right now, my focus, as many others, is just things are not affordable as it is. Everything talked about here, somebody's paying for it, whether it's the state through grants, you pay for it, I pay for it. So I'm going to need to see a lot more.
Ms. Barrick, I'm just shocked by your comments. Vice Mayor Dizzy, would you like to weigh in? Thank you for your work on this committee. I think, are you on the committee also, or no? I thought two of you. Yeah, okay, thank you, yeah. And I'll go to if you have comments, but Ms. Dizzy.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you to the consultants for coming. And I also want to say that I love the technology behind the draft report. It's really cool. If you haven't all been into it, you can click in, find anything you want, use its own built-in AI tools, and you can also enter your public comment there directly. So I think it's great to send it to us, but it probably wouldn't hurt to enter it directly into the document as well, just to ensure that it's captured. And I just want to say that conceptually, I'm absolutely supportive of the plan and excited about it, because I do think it's fair to say that if we're not aggressive, that the climate impacts will change this valley in ways that will hurt quality of life, public health, small businesses, everything, whether it's like water supply, high energy bills, crop viability. But I do also want to make sure that we're set up for success. So I think I would also echo the concerns about costs. And maybe one question I have is, as we look at this, there seem to be a lot of mandates. I've kind of wondered if there could be a portfolio approach to this, where there might be a little bit of flexibility to lean into each jurisdiction to lean into something that they're really good at and get some sort of extra credit if they can't meet everything. So yeah, I'm interested in the flexibility, but I do think it's exciting, and the process has been great with a lot of opportunity for public comment, and I know we're pretty far from being complete. Thank you.
All right, others? Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Padron. Yeah, thanks.
So as most of you know, I am on the board of directors for the California Association of Realtors, as well as the North Bay Association of Realtors. What I'm going to say right now, while I believe some of this is wonderful, the California Association of Realtors, as well as the North Bay, have not only drawn an opposed position to this, they are going to the legislators. And I'm here to tell you why. What's in the plan? Mandatory home retrofits. The plan mandates electric conversion of all existing homes, replacing all appliances, water heaters, furnaces, gas stoves, dryers, etc., rewiring electrical panels, and can even affect your driveway and or road work in some cases. Costs could range from tens to hundreds of thousands. Point of sale mandates for non-residential, BE2. When a non-residential property is sold, it could be required to complete new disclosures, inspections, upgrades before closing escrow. Owners needing to sell immediately with a 5 to 10 day close could be seriously affected if a retrofit is part of the point of sale. Why is this a problem? Affordability. Housing is already unaffordable for many Napa families. Forcing upgrade risks, pushing more people out of home ownership, and making housing even more expensive. Capacity gaps, the amount of needed electricity, infrastructure, contractors, permitting, inspections, and funding to handle this mandate remains in question. The plan is moving faster than reality. Unfair targeting. Homes make up only a fraction of local emissions. Transportation, solid waste, wastewater, and public facilities are the lion's share. But the plan puts the harshest requirements on every existing homeowner. One size fits all. The majority of homes were built pre-code. A blanket mandate will not work for every home or every budget. What I do support: giving homeowners incentives and choices on how to improve their homes, not putting in mandates. Government, leading by example, by upgrading their own facilities and fleet emissions from the public sector, and focusing on new construction, not forcing retrofits on existing homes. The state law already mandates substantial building efficiency standards. I know that we are not putting in motions at this time. This is not an item that has a motion on the table. An FYI, there is a Zoom meeting and an in-person meeting September 26th at 9:30 a.m. at the County of Napa, 1195 3rd Street, number 305. If you want to join in Zoom or in person, if you need more information, I'm happy to give it to you. But I would like to oppose this measure, but with some bullet points. I would like to restructure it so there's a menu of efficiency options for incentivizing property owners to choose their most cost-effective options for their homes. I would like a lead by example. All member governments should first electrify and retrofit their own buildings, facilities, fleet, solid waste, and wastewater operations. And I would like to support practical, affordable solutions that don't put the burden on every homeowner. Again, if you have any questions or anything like that, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
All right. Other comments? All right. Well, okay. Do you have your marching orders? I'm just wondering, so you're going to go back to the committee. Obviously, there's going to be written comment from Mr. Warner and others. I'm trying to think about the process here, whether we can find some common ground on some of the items that have been raised, concerns that have been raised, and having maybe some direction to sort of take some of this information and coalesce it into a document that the city council can rally around what we support and what we don't support. I do appreciate some of the items that you do support, and I recognize the difficulties on the cost. We all know that's a challenge. What do you think about that in terms of a process to ensure that somebody speaks for the city of St. Helena, unless we just want to adopt Mr. Warner's critique? So I don't know if we want to do that, but there's a lot of good information in there. Ms. Deasy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure, yes, that sounds perfect. Can the city attorney weigh in on some suggestions for how we do that without violating the borough?
I would suggest a subcommittee, but yes, of course, Mr. Walsh.
So is is the issue that you want to provide more? So my understanding is that the committee is, or the regional committee is doing this in front of every jurisdiction to get feedback, which you just provided kind of individually, and then they'll go back and work on their plan a little bit more. So these are all opportunities for public feedback. Is it something that you want to provide something more formal to?
I would say a written document, just a couple of pages that sort of summarizes some of the points that have been made. And my suggestion would be in the form of a subcommittee to come up with that. If the subcommittee wants me to sign it, I think the subcommittee should sign it. But something that says this is from the city of St. Helena, these are our points, rather than sort of the hit and miss items that we have enunciated today.
So, I mean, what I would probably...
If legal.
Yeah, so what I would probably, I do think it makes sense to assign it to a subcommittee. I would be more comfortable if you brought it back and just put it on consent.
That's
and then
fine.
send it over at the next meeting.
Would you have any observations, Mr. Camello, about that?
Not really. That makes sense. And also, I just want to point out that we have Deborah Elliott from Napa, who, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't know she was in the audience. Thank you for coming, making the trip here. Appreciate that. So she represents the city's interests at the meeting, and she's, as I said earlier, serves as the city's eyes and ears. And I just want to see whether she want to opine on this as well.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Deborah Elliott with the City of Napa. As the city manager said, I'm assisting St. Helena with some of this climate work. And to add on, I think there is the Climate Action Committee meeting on Friday, and I know one of the items is a report back from the Climate Action Committee members. So I think at this point, you could just take kind of the notes as you have them, not as a commitment or even an agreement from all the members of the City Council, but just kind of to note the different items that were brought up. That would be what I would recommend for kind of this stage of moving forward. And there will be additional opportunities to comment as the plan kind of continues down its pathway. But Friday is the next opportunity.
All right. Makes sense to you, Vice Mayor Deasy? Yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. But we can, so you can report orally on what you heard, and then we can maybe have a more formal letter a little bit later. So just, I think I share some of the concerns about, we like to say in the city, unfunded mandates. It doesn't really apply here, but although, it feels like it. I'm just wondering, I'm just thinking out loud whether that ultimately, if there is a plan adopted, I hope there is. I'm supportive of a lot of the actions concerned about the unfunded mandates, but taking this in more discrete sort of chunks, and I think that's probably part of it. It's designed that way where we can say, this is what we can do, this is what we want to do, and sort of just look at it that way from an economic perspective, a financial perspective, what is feasible. There's a lot going on here. Wow. I didn't read every page, but I read most of the report, and it's quite intriguing. It's really remarkable. But I'm also wondering out loud whether there could be, on the mandatory items, whether it can be conditional. That's how lawyers think, You build in conditions and say, well, there's got to be an out. So do it if you get the funding. If you don't get the funding, you have a way of going, no, I can't do this, and shouldn't be punished for it. I'm not even sure I actually don't know who's going to enforce it, but that's another topic. But that's what I'm thinking. That's how I protect myself. We go forward conditioned upon the ability to fund these things. And I don't think any of us really know what the true funding is. I think it's a lot larger than we can anticipate. So that's just a thought for my colleagues as that discussion goes forward. I also am interested in thinking more about, the potential JPA, but also the existing JPAs. The existing JPAs, to my knowledge, have really not been brought into the process, maybe indirectly, I don't know. We have existing JPAs, waste management, transportation. We have districts. Flood control district comes to mind as being vital to this process, and there's going to be a lot of work there and coordination between a potential new JPA and the local jurisdictions and the existing JPAs to have all kinds of their own documentation, guidelines, mandates. So there's something there that needs to be explored a little bit more. Yeah, I think that's well. The other thing I was thinking about, I thought I saw an interesting play in terms of one writer was talking about avoiding certain language like equity, DEI, because of just the state of national politics and the potential or lack of potential to get funding. Others think we should actually focus more on justice and equity. So that's sort of an interesting balance of positions there. I don't know what the answer is. I do think it goes to the idea of affordability, and I think that's what one writer was getting to, and the other writer was getting to, being able to generate the grant. So I don't know how the committee will play that out. It's got to be very nuanced, obviously, but I'm cognizant of that issue also. Vice Mayor Deasy. I'm finished, by the way, Vice Mayor Deasy. Thanks.
Sorry, I read those comments too, and they did stand out to me. And there are other words that can be used in place of social equity or DEI that might kick us out of grant eligibility.
Mr. Comello, yes.
Not on this subject. I just
Do I
want
have to
to
go
point
like
out.
this, Mr. Comello? Yes, Mr. Comello.
I just want to point out that this is a great example for the council's knowledge that we oftentimes will collaborate with other institutions because we are small as an agency and we don't have the capacity and expertise in-house. And this is a great example of us utilizing Deborah's expertise and she's full-time employee of the City of Napa working on climate change among other things. And so we get to utilize a small portion of her time at a fraction of the cost that we would have had to fund a particular position. So we also use Napa, City of Napa for housing, as a housing representative, rather than having in-house expertise on that subject. So just want to point that out. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have comfort on the direction that we're going, my colleagues? Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, let's take let's take a break till 7:30. right, folks, we're going to reconvene. Thank you. All right, thank you for coming to order so quickly. I appreciate that. We're on to our last item, item 13.2. It's entitled Receive Report from Staff and Consultant on Housing Element Site 10, 1933 Spring Street, Alternative Analysis. I want to acknowledge that we've received a fair amount of public comment written in the written form. Amy Particelli, Christy Palmasano, Pierre Bierbent, sorry if I mispronounced that, Maxine Angel, Brittany Anderson, Aaron and Peter Prespolinski, Stefano Particelli, Jessica Haig, Patty. Thank you. And thank you so much for that. Tina and Tom DeGiorgio. All right, thank you for the written comment. I assume that I can turn to Mr. Rosa. I'll let you introduce the item, Mr. Comello. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for context before Director DeRosa makes a presentation, if you recall that the council gave direction to staff to look at alternatives to Site 10. And as a result, staff met with consultant along with a couple of community members, went through a lengthy process and came up with the report you see now. That report was sent to the council at that time when it was completed, and we expected that the report would be transmitted to the community through the representatives that were part of the process. We heard from community members that they had not seen the report, and so the point of this presentation is to daylight it to the community, not to, that there's no action. In other words, we are not seeking any action from the council. Inevitably, there'll be comments and feedback that you'll receive regarding the Site 10 in general and what options might be possible. I have talked to a couple of community members who were disappointed about the scope of the project itself, meaning that the scope appeared to be, as we were directed, to look at alternatives of Site 10 that met HCD's guidelines, which are very tough, very prescriptive. The ideas that I've heard more recently have been very creative, more broad-based, and I mean, as one person, I welcome them, but at the same time, I don't know whether the council wants to entertain ideas that are beyond the very, very tough rules that have been enshrined in laws and are right now being enforced by each city. With that, Director DeRosa.
Thank you.
I'll have more questions about that last comment you made. I wasn't quite sure. I'll need more clarification, but let's just see how it evolves, and then we'll go back to that. Thank you, Mr. Comello. Mr. Rosa, thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Comello and Mayor and council members. We actually have our featured speaker is our housing element consultant, Ryan Lester from Mintier Harnish Consultants, who prepared this report and also prepared our housing element. But before that, I wanted to just make some remarks about the housing element process in general, because I think there's been some community perception that that the city was not trying to have a fully transparent process, but in reality, our housing element was actually a 3-year process, and I know some of Mayor Doring were on the council at that time, and also a little just a factual information that's included in the Site 10 facts is that the housing element Site 10 has actually been in the housing element since 2009. So it's not something, a new area of exploration as it relates to our housing element sites selection. But in terms of the outreach that the city did do during that 3-year process, which led to our ultimate certification in September 2023, we had public outreach in newsletters, e-blasts, social media, public workshops, public hearings, and focus groups. We launched...
Folks, you know instinctively that is not right, right? Let you, when we have public comment, folks can clarify the record as they deem needed, and that's fine. I just talked about listening. Let's listen, and then when I open public comment, folks are able to express themselves. Thank you.
So there were 3 public workshops that were held between September 2021 and March 2022. There were 3 joint sessions of the City Council and the Planning Commission that were held between March 2021 and July 2022. We actually had presentations talking about site selection at the December 16th, 2021 focus group. There was a January 20th, 2022 community meeting to talk about site selection, and a February 22nd, 2022 joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the Council to report on those findings. We also had comments on the public review draft of the housing element to discuss not just the policies, but the methodologies and the sites. And the public comment was received between June 29th, 2022 and July 30th, 2022. As I had shared at the special housing laws meeting on August 19th of this year, it is important for the community to pay attention to all of our announcements and notices related to the general plan, housing, the zoning, because as we can see, these policies and development standards truly do impact the built environment. So we don't take that lightly, and I would like to just frame that's the framework that led us to this housing element site and the upzoning that we prepared for the council's approval last year. Now I will introduce Ryan Lester with our housing element consultant, Minter Harnish, who will provide an overview of the alternative sites, and then we will both be available to answer questions after the presentation. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me today to talk about our report. My name is Ryan Lester. I'm a project manager with Minter Harnish, and I was the consultant team lead on the housing element. Next slide, please. So the reason we're here today is that the council asked us to look for alternative sites for Site 10, to analyze vacant and underutilized sites and see if there are any sites that by HCD's guidelines could be potential replacement sites. Just as a reminder, Site 10 was counted for 44 lower income units. So those 44 lower income units would be what we would need to make up with any replacement site. But that capacity doesn't have to be contained within a single site. We could find 3 or 4, and as long as they each meet HCD's criteria, you could actually potentially use those. Next slide, please. So a few information sources for us. There was a citizens input group which provided some suggested sites to look into. We also used available GIS data that looked at improvement value and land value to identify underutilized sites. There was a 2015 feasibility analysis that had some suggested sites in there. And then as well, the preliminary sites inventory. So when we did the sites inventory as the housing element, as part of the housing element, we looked at a lot of sites and we selected those that we felt would be most feasible for development in the next 8 years. That process did eliminate a few sites, so we went back and reopened some of those sites and looked. So those were the data sources that led us to find and identify those sites to evaluate. Next slide, please. So HCD, as has been mentioned, has some very strict criteria for sites. These are specifically for lower income sites. If Site 10 had been just used for above moderate income capacity, we'd have a lot less hoops to jump through. But when it comes to affordable housing and planning capacity for affordable housing, HCD has met with affordable housing developers and asked them what they need in order to have a project that pencils out, right? And so they've set up some guidelines. If the site is too small or too large, there's extra costs and it's harder to make a profit in the same way. So HCD really wants these sites to be within a ½ acre and 10 acres, right? There are density requirements. So any site that you rezone for lower income capacity has to be zoned with a minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre. And that site also has to be able to facilitate 16 units per site. So again, if your site is too small and it can't fit 16 units, you can't actually use that site as a rezone site for lower income capacity. Also, because we are planning for lower income housing needs, we need to select locations that are within general proximity to transportation services. This is just important because a lot of cities have available space, but it's on the outskirts of town. There's no real way for someone without a car to really get into town for the services. So really, we want to plan near transportation services, grocery stores, things like that. Just really, you don't want to plan on the outskirts far away. And then finally, there's one big issue here. The housing element found that the city has a concentration of affordable housing and multifamily zoning in the east side of the city. So in order to work to overcome that rather than exacerbate that, we actually had to jump through extra hoops to show HCD that we were planning affordable housing capacity on the west side of the city. So that was a big deal with HCD. That's a big deal for all the jurisdictions under new fair housing laws. You actually have to analyze your entire site's inventory and then show how it does not exacerbate conditions, right? So Site 10 was on the west side. If we replace that with a site on the east side where affordable housing is concentrated, then we would actually be exacerbating conditions and HCD won't approve our housing element, right? So we do have to we had to try to replace that site with another site on the west side. Next slide, please.
Question for clarification
Please.
purposes, not an extensive
No,
discussion.
it's a clarification. Last slide, you had mentioned something around lots on the outskirts, that they weren't as desirable. Is that a choice, or putting the question, or is that like a red line?
Yeah, HCD wants to see lower income sites within proximity to transportation services, things like that. There's no strict criteria for that. It's just, in my experience, it's really hard to get them to approve a site that is, a mile out of town, right? It's on the outskirts of town, right? If that site was maybe an annexation site that was master planned and there's a whole master planned community out there, it gets a little easier, right? Because there's a whole community being planned out there, there's action being taken towards that development, right? But if we choose a site that's on the edge, way out in the edge of town, it's hard to access, it may be in a high fire hazard severity zone, those are extra constraints that site has, and it makes it harder to include those sites. I will say it's not impossible, but just like if you have a finding in CEQA, you have to mitigate that finding, right? We would have to include significant program actions to overcome those constraints, because especially if that development is really far from water and sewer pipelines, the cost to put in that development is going to be really high because the offsite improvements are really expensive, right? So the city may say, oh, well, we want to use that as a lower income site. We're going to put in all that infrastructure for you, right? So that you can actually pencil out as an affordable development. That would be another case, right? But for most cities, overcoming those kind of constraints are really difficult, right? Coming up with money just to hook up a parcel way on the outskirts of town is really expensive. And also, it may not be in the city's best interest, right? So those are the types of things we have to take into account when we're looking at sites. The Citizens Input Group suggested 3 sites. Again, as part of the housing element, we have to, for any site in the housing element, particularly low-income sites, we have to look for any physical, environmental, or governmental constraint that could potentially constrain development there. And that includes constraints that just add costs, right? So if we identify a lower income site that's in a flood zone, we would have to have a mitigation measure to try to help make that more affordable, because the cost to create that development and to overcome that flood zone issue is increased, right? Also, things like owner opposition or disinterest in development, right? If the owner has been engaged and they are not interested, that doesn't necessarily say we can't use a site, but it does mean that we need to look at it further, right? So if there's an owner that's not interested and they're actively using the site and it's well utilized, it becomes very hard to use that site. If they're disinterested on the fence, but it's just a vacant parcel sitting there, it's a lot easier to use, right? So these are the kind of things that we have to look at. So that's what we looked at with these first 3 sites. Next slide, please. So 657 Main Street, this site does have some vacant little areas, but what you can see is that without redeveloping the structures that are there, there's no real spot to put 44 units, right? There are active uses on the site, which makes it harder to justify the use of that site for a lower income site, just because it's less feasible to be redeveloped in the next 8 years. And now I believe we have 6 years, right? So we're trying to say we have sites that we think will be developed by 2031, right? So this site additionally had the owner had an entitlement on the site that he let expire, and the citizens input groups suggested that it's not likely to be redeveloped by 2031. So we excluded this site. Next, please. 1325 Adams. So this is the St. Helena Elementary School. The site is not vacant. There is a large play area that could be developed into housing, but it's currently in active use. And again, the owner was not interested when engaged. So that would be a very hard site to use. HCD would want to know where are the kids going to play at school, things like that. It's really hard to use sites that are in active use unless you have a history in town of redevelopment like that, right? So if you had old schools that were redeveloping in the last 8 years to do housing for teachers, and you could point to that would be an extra argument. We don't really have that. Next slide, please. Next is 2222 Spring Street. So this is a church site. Again, it's the more vacant, it's the underutilized portion of the site, but it is used, and it does have infrastructure improvements there. So it is considered an underutilized site, which again makes it harder to include. You have to include more programming. And then again, the owners were when engaged, didn't show interest, and it's currently used as a church parking lot. So without owner interest, again, this would be a really hard site to use. Next slide, please. So once we looked at those three sites, we identified vacant and severely underutilized parcels. We identify underutilized parcels by the value of the improvements on the site to the value of the site itself. That's why in our analysis a few parks came up, right? Because the value of the land is much more than the improvements, right? So we identified 16 sites, 13 of which are very constrained. We looked at existing conditions, so what's the lot shape, what's the size, what's the land use and zoning, and what active or inactive uses are there. We had to look at environmental and physical constraints. So if it's a flag lot, it's harder to use just because access is harder. If there's a right-of-way going through the site, it becomes more challenging to use. Or if there are other physical constraints. If it's in a flood zone or a fire zone, it's harder to use. Again, distance from existing utility infrastructure, I mentioned this already. It just, the further you are, the more off-site improvement costs you have. And then finally, we looked at the potential to accommodate lower income housing for each site. And again, this is based on HCD's criteria. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we put together a summary table that's in the report. We tried to make it as readable as possible. We covered the details, and we just tried to go site by site and show a summary. You can review that. That's in Table 1 in the report. I'm sure we'll talk about some of these sites when we get some comments in. Next slide, please. And then you can see the evaluation of each of the sites following that table. Again, we've identified constraints. We've identified zoning issues, flood zone issues, fire hazard zone issues, et cetera, and then looked at, okay, is this site really practical? I will say that we put together this report and we went through, I think, 2 or 3 drafts back and forth with staff, getting their input on these sites and whether or not they felt the sites were feasible. So this isn't just my opinion from Sacramento. This was also worked out with staff. Next slide, please. So 13 sites are pretty constrained, right? They're constrained enough that under the existing housing element, you don't have programs in place to be able to use those sites, right? So a lot of the sites have active uses, which you really need to have programming to support redevelopment. Several had road or utility access issues. You can't access the site. Several were in a flood zone. Several were parks that are existing parks that are in use, right? And it's not in the city's interest to redevelop those for housing. There were 3 sites that were interesting, and we took a deeper look into. Go to the next slide, please. So Site F, this is the Sager Ford parking lot. It would actually be a decent site, except for the fact that it's used. It's so well utilized. You can see in the picture they're using that parking lot. The business is very active. It is not an underutilized business at all, and staff felt they need that parking lot, and they're not going to let us do that. So that site really, it's constrained by the active use, and there's no extra acreage there to develop additional structures, right? Site I, it's the same, a similar situation. There are improvements on the site. It is a parking lot. It's also a well-used parking lot for the bank, and there's just not enough information to suggest that we think that site will turn into housing in the next 6 years. So we felt like those sites, although they were interesting, it would be very hard to include them without having to reopen and redraft the housing element programs, particularly. Next slide, please. And then finally, Site L. This is actually a vacant site. The site could support housing. This is actually a good site. If you don't use it now, I would suggest you use it in your next housing element, right? This site can support housing. We did a realistic capacity calculation, which is what's required for the housing element. You're not allowed to just assume maximum capacity. You have to do a little formula that HCD tells you how to do to figure out what the realistic capacity for that site is. So that site we could assume 29 units on that site. Again, we had to, we're trying to replace 44 units. So this site alone just doesn't have enough capacity, right?
That's North Crane, correct?
I'd have to look it up, I'm sorry.
Next slide shows
Yeah.
it then. And I just,
It doesn't have to be on the same site to replace all 44 units. So it could be this way.
No, let him finish, and then if you have questions, we can have them answered by the staff.
So it looks like
Thank you.
Site L is, there's no address, but it's adjacent to 1053 Crane Avenue. So again, this site could be capacity for lower income housing. It could be used in the housing element, but it's just it's insufficient by itself to make up for Site 10. Next slide, please. So our conclusion was, based on the sites that we identified and evaluated, there was the one site that we found could have 29 units of capacity on it, but we didn't have any other sites that we felt were feasible. The constraints analysis and HCD requirements for overcoming those constraints are too high. So given the available sites west of 29 that we have identified and evaluated, replacing site number 10 is not viable without at least a second site. So with that, thank you for having me. I'm here to answer questions and listen to public comments. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. I want to allow for public comment, but if you have a question right now that's somewhat easy to answer, or is it more of a discussion type of question?
It was asking, I wanted to know more information on Site I. Because combined Site L
Go ahead.
with
Let's
Site
just
I-
do a quick clarification of Site I. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
So you indicated Site I wasn't suitable. Can you expand on that? Because I think people will naturally go to Site L, understand that it's not 44 units, but it's 29, and then the next step would be, well, hey, we need to find a site with 15 units, right?
Right.
And so Site I looks good from my eyeballs,
Right.
but I wanted you to go more in depth
Sure,
on why it
sure.
isn't good.
Yeah, so because there are improvements on the site, HCD, even if there's dollars of improvements, HCD considers it a redevelopment site. There's a higher threshold for including redevelopment sites, including you need to point to similar trends that support your assumptions that that site will redevelop. And then you have to have additional programming in your housing element to support and incentivize development on those sites, right? There's additional costs because there are improvements. So how is the city going to incentivize and encourage development on that site? So again, it's not an unusable site, but as is mentioned in the FAQ document, in order to use a site that is not currently in the housing element and to avoid rezoning another site, the entire housing element would have to be reopened, right? So we would have to reopen the entire housing element, which the city paid hundreds of dollars to do, and to become compliant, right?
Thousands of dollars.
I'm sorry, hundreds of thousands. Right.
By the way, he's referring to the site in the back of Umpqua Bank. That's what he's talking about, right? I don't know if people can see that on that.
The parking
slide.
lot site,
Yeah.
yes. I'm not saying that site can't ever be used. It could certainly be used. You would have to revise your entire housing element sites inventory. You would lose compliance with HCD and with the state. You would be subjected to builder's remedy. And also once you process a rezone and an application comes in, you can't downzone that site and pull back that application, right? And so that's something else to consider here, is that even if we tried to replace site 10 with 2 other sites, you may not get what you want, right?
Understood. So one last question, Mr. Mayor, and thank you.
You only said one question.
Well,
Mr. Barrick, I'll give you one more.
so, just a follow on. So how about a scenario where there was a private or private-public partnership that bought out the developer, and knowing we still have 44 sites we need to do, would then shift those sites to these elements? Does that change the equation at all? Just trying to think outside the box.
The hard part is that when you do your housing element, it's a zoning and capacity question, right? It's an exercise in showing that we have enough zoning. The actual development and meeting your RENA, meeting your housing needs through actual development is something that you then track through the planning period, and you have to report to HCD. So you have a requirement to plan enough capacity and then to actually work towards encouraging that development, right? I think what you're talking about is if we went out and acquired a site, it would be more likely to be built. That would, if you develop that site, you could take credit for that as far as actual production, but owning a redevelopment site and not having any steps in place to do so, HCD's not gonna, they're not gonna accept it. So a city-owned, publicly owned site, you have to jump through even more hoops than you would think because you own that site and you have control over it. So you have to say when you're gonna put it out to bid for, put out an RFP to develop it, and what your whole timeline is for doing so. Again, you could do that. The city has the right to do that. Anybody can revise their housing element and try to get it approved with HCD, right? My job is to just give you input about the difficulties of some of these sites and what it would take in the housing element, right?
All right. Thank you. I know that Ms. Batteroda had a question for you. A brief clarifying question before I open it to public comment. Sure.
Yes, brief. I just had one question. I was wondering if it was already looked at, or if not, railroad property on Railroad. It's about an acre. Why wasn't that maybe on the list?
It's already on the list, I think.
So that's on the east side of the city, not on the west. That was the criteria.
All right. It's not already designated for housing? Yeah. So
It's on the east side, they said it has to be on the
I'm just saying as a replacement site, it would not be a replacement site because it already is a site, correct?
I'm not sure if we use that site in a
That's
housing
not an-
element.
okay,
That would be the case, but it's not on the west side, so it can't really
No, I
replace
understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's open it for public comment. Line up and let us know what you think about this. Respectfully, let everybody have a chance to speak. We don't need to have clapping and all that. Let's just kind of listen to folks and go from there. Thank you.
I guess I'm first. Hi, my name is William Wagner. I live at 1160 Hudson Avenue. I came tonight to suggest you guys don't accept the resolution to go forward with Site 10. But Site L is directly behind my house. Like directly behind my house. So there's a 3-story apartment building. They'll be looking into my bedroom. They're looking into my daughter's bedroom. It's much, much smaller property, much less space. You should also recognize that everybody who lined up to Site L had to fight PG&E for years over the high-density power lines above our houses. So we've already gone through this already with PG&E. So the last thing we need is tall apartment buildings behind our house. I'm not in support of Site 10 per se, but it is a better site than Site L for sure. It could be done tastefully. It doesn't need to be 3 stories because that's going to ruin it for everybody. The other thing I'd like to point out is Sites F and I, they're parking lots. You know, Site 10 is a beautiful vineyard. Site L is a grove of ancient oak trees that are probably protected by the state, so you should think about that too. And it's quiet and it's peaceful and it adds to the quality of life in this town. Sager Ford is a dump. I'm sorry. And then the lot behind Umpqua Bank, dump. Come on. That actually would be improved by housing. So let's think about these things before we just take, because all I'm hearing is it's easier, it's cheaper, it's going to be less friction. We don't have to reopen the housing element if we just build in these places. Well, it still stinks. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm trying to discourage clapping, but, every now and then, No, we want to be respectful so that everybody has a chance to feel like they can come to the mic without a lot of judgment. Right? Go ahead.
Judgment. Hi, I'm Beth Novak at 1256 Hudson Avenue. As I spoke to at the last meeting, there just has to exist a level of trust between the city and its constituents. And that trust includes a sense that input will be sought and that proper notifications will be given. The lack of transparency on this parcel's rezoning has entirely eroded that trust, and I think that is a real problem here, and you can feel it in the room. I can. We elect the City Council to represent our interests and the interests of our community, not the interests of the state of California, nor of developers. The City Council appoints planning commissioners who are meant to scrutinize what comes before the planning department, and the planning director and other staff are hired by and overseen by the City Council. By definition, this role of planning director is also meant to represent the interests of its citizens. The rezoning was done disingenuously, in my view, and without proper notice. And you can argue that it was proper notice. Notice was poorly done, again, eroding trust. Based upon this, the City Council asked the staff to look at options to change the high-density designation to medium density. The staff has not done this in what I would call a thorough manner. A consultant was hired to look at only singular parcels, we just listened to that report, that would accommodate what the city seems to want rather than looking at ways to accomplish our housing needs on myriad sites. And I keep hearing this thing about 44 low-income housing, and we're getting 15 out of what is currently proposed on Lot 10. It's absurd. I'm sorry. I shouldn't use that word. As our City Council, you must not accept this staff report. On our behalf, you need to ask for better. Specifically, you need to ask that this parcel be rezoned to medium density. This parcel, a historic vineyard site, and it is beyond ironic to me that the development is called Spring Vineyard when the vines will be removed to accommodate it and it will be vineyard no more, is simply not appropriate for high-density housing. Together, we can find creative and reasonable ways to accommodate the housing that we need with this parcel as medium density. Together, we can rebuild trust. In our small, tight-knit community, this is paramount. You, as the City Council, have this opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Actually, absurd is not a really bad word, so that's okay. I mean, it is in the English language. I wouldn't say it is, but I want... Ms. Keneally, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Hi,
You're the only other person with a tie in the room, so maybe.
Keneally.
Oh, no, Mr. Camillo.
I live on Spring Street, about a mile and a half from the project. I was part of the City Council that assigned the city staff to find an alternative to Site 10. Here the council is again, a year later, in receipt of a nothing-can-be-done response from the planning department and a hired consultant. The report contains no creative thinking on breaking out of the legal box they described back then, and no thinking outside the box on how to solve this problem for our citizens. That's very disappointing, and valuable time has passed. So here are 3 hopefully helpful suggestions on what to do now. I suggest, first and most importantly, that the City Council should not accept the report tonight. The matter needs further analysis led by a higher level of city leadership. Don't let the accepting of this report become tacit approval of its findings. It is the City Council's exact role to push back when needed. My second suggestion is the City Council should be explicit on who will lead on this issue from now on. The mayor, the council or one of its members, the planning commission, the city manager, the city attorney, the city department, planning department, again, a better consultant. Somehow, the combination of all these folks is not protecting us from the creeping suburbanization of our semi-rural town. We need a council person to be point on Site 10, perhaps the mayor himself. Finally, the council should instruct the city staff to support its citizens in exploring new alternatives, not to just notify the citizens and move on. Possibilities still exist. Is it time to work beyond the HCD process and to contest the appropriate and the not impossible alternatives that were talked about even tonight? Is swapping parcel 10 as impossible as it sounds? Sounds to me like we heard 3 ways that maybe it wasn't impossible from the consultant just now. We should expand the search for alternatives to all of St. Helena. That may not be what Sacramento prefers, but I believe the regulators would compromise on this issue if pressed. We should work with the city attorney to buy this room the time that it needs to get better organized, since the city solutions have failed them so far. Now, more urgent, real work has to be done, but we'll need more time. We could find out what amount of money it would take to buy the site back from the current owner. We can involve the Land Trust, Napa RCD, local philanthropists, and all sorts of other people now that a process has put us in this tricky situation. We could engage directly at a senior level with the current owner, if he or she lives in the valley, and see if they'll be flexible. Finally, we could help a collection of neighbors to work together to buy some or all of the parcel. Throughout the U.S. and the world, there are pocket parks owned by abutting property owners. When you walk through London or my hometown of Boston, the abutting property owners own the parks behind their houses, and that ownership adds immediate value to the parcels that they control. There are surely a dozen more good ideas. I've brought up a few. I'll stop here, but the issue has come to the top of the agenda for good reason. I remind the City Council to remember the voters and to send this back to the staff for more work.
Again, I'm trying to discourage clapping for our speakers. It's, I said it in prior meetings, I want folks to feel comfortable getting to the mic, whether most of it's clapping, but every now and then people go boo, you know, and so let's be better at that. I understand the emotions here, no doubt about it. I'm an emotional person too, so I get that. Mr. Adamson, welcome. Nice to see you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'd just like to echo what the speakers before me have said, which is I'm encouraging the council to not accept the staff report tonight. We need more time. We need to be more creative. We need to push back on some of these issues. There are parcels that I can think of that were not mentioned tonight that I would be more than happy to share with the planning director and whoever it is that would be run point on this. But again, my purpose of speaking is just to encourage the council to not accept the proposal tonight and perhaps put as much energy in this as they did with the visibility corners.
Got to get that dig in there, right, Mr. Anderson? Thank you. Others wishing to opine on this issue to your city council? All right.
Hi, my name is Steve Goldfarb. I'm 455 Bella Vista Court, St. Helena. I feel like I'm standing here in the minority. It is unusual for me to ever get up here and support something this city council wants to do. But tonight, I think that's the right decision. There is always another way. And another way for this city was to avoid building housing, especially low-income housing, for a long time. And we've been put in a position that if we don't take action, the state will take action, and we will wind up with a use on a piece of property that we all hate. I don't think we should take that risk. I think the staff has done a good job in trying to find a solution. This property has been designated as a housing site for a long time. They didn't just convert it at this time. The fact is, because it had an old vineyard on it, everybody assumes it's always going to be a vineyard. But we need affordable housing in this community. And we don't need it 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We need it now. And because it's on the west side, there's a lot of objection to it. I live on the west side. I understand all of that. But we need housing for people who work in this community, who are part of this community, and this is an appropriate use. Nothing you are doing tonight is approving a specific project. I would assume that if a project came before you, all of the concerns that are being raised here will be raised again with that developer to make sure that the housing that is built there is consistent with the community around it. And with that, I would say, you know, my former law firm was here talking to you a couple weeks ago about the possibility of the state just coming in here if we don't do something. And that's not an idle act. Okay? That's a real possibility, and it's happening all over the state. It is time to take control and time to build housing where it is desperately needed in this city. And I support the staff's work, and I would ask that the council approve it, and we go ahead to try to build the best possible housing we can on this site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for clarification, there is no decision recommended in the agenda. It's simply to receive the report. It's not, we're not accepting the report. It's really daylighting the report. We're just giving it to our community in a more transparent way. Just want to clarify that there's nothing to approve tonight.
Hi, my
Ms.
name
Cobell,
is
thank you.
Michelle Cobell. I'm speaking as a resident. I've been catching up a lot on the stuff that's going on, and just to Eric, your name is Eric, sorry. One of the things you mentioned was the outskirts of the town and public transportation. We actually have a Vine bus, like a
Yeah.
Vine bus, that you can...
Make sure you direct your attention to the council who you're speaking with. Thank you.
Just, if it needs to be near public transportation, we have a Vine bus and an app, and you can actually get picked up and dropped off anywhere in town. So there's really no bad public transportation. When you think of public transportation, it doesn't just mean Main Street. There is an app, and for the most part, this town is very walkable. I think when he was presenting, he was saying that the sites have to be, they don't have to fit all 44 units in that one site. They could be smaller sites that would accommodate the numbers. So this is kind of to Mr. Goldfarb's point, we do need housing. And to what we all read shockingly about Sunshine this week in the newspaper and its closing and the struggles that they're facing, we know housing is a real issue. And I don't think anybody is opposed to housing here. It's just kind of doing it right in a way that protects our community, especially in the general plan, and how that community design chapter talks about ag, open land, enhancing community, the character that we have, the smaller size buildings that we have. I actually worked on a hotel in Calistoga, and the general plan did not allow for 3 stories on Lincoln Ave. So I find it kind of strange that like Lincoln Ave couldn't have 3 stories, and yet we could have a 3-story building. So the points I want to address a bunch of things that was said, and I only have 2 more minutes. So I remember watching the presentation by Aaron Heacock, and he was saying, and I think this was when the housing element was not complete, and it was still open for builder's remedy, and they needed to close it so that we can like at least close out this builder's remedy thing. One thing that I understood was that Site 10 could be on that list. However, if there were other sites that were used, it does not necessarily mean Site 10 has to be used. All the sites that are proposed on that map are just options, and it's up to us to kind of promote or like be creative. A really big point that I want to point out is on that big list of, I think I left it on my chair, the housing numbers, RENA, the 256 numbers. If you look at Piedmont, Oakland, and there are other towns that are struggling with small and limited things. They've done community outreach to like promote ADUs and JDUs. Those count towards the RENA numbers, so you could reduce the overall large number of 256 by promoting and incentivizing ADUs and JDUs and getting housing numbers to lower, so that those large numbers like sites, they don't have to be 3 stories and dense, which doesn't quite, I'm not saying it's bad. We need housing. It's just how can we accommodate it in a reasonable way that protects and enhances our neighborhood, our community. One thing I do want to say is that we are different. If you go back to my public comment from the public forum, we are not like Calistoga, Napa, Yountville, and this was kind of more about the regarding of the selling of Adams Street, but we are unique, and a lot, I think what we love in this town and need to protect is community. And I think my big takeaway from the study session last week was that we did not want to leave our town a big mess for our kids, and this is part of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. David Pruder, Valley View Street. It's good to see everyone again.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Nice to be seen.
Yeah, I had deja vu walking in this room from about a year ago, and it wasn't a good deja vu, but that issue aside, it's good to be back, and I just have a couple points I wanted to make. One thing with Mr. Goldfarb, with all due respect to his comments, everyone here and everyone that I've talked to, hundreds of neighbors, have all been supportive of housing, and everyone who lives around there understood that the vineyard was zoned for residential housing, but at the time it was zoned for medium density. So there was a development that could be proposed there that would be much more consistent with the neighborhood and the community at a height level that was acceptable, at a density level that was acceptable. And so everyone was supportive of that. That's what we were asking the staff to look into, was the possibility of keeping that at medium density, not replacing the site in its entirety. So I know that it sounded difficult to come up with a 4.4 acre site with that could accommodate 44 affordable units on the west side. That was kind of an impossible task from the start, and I think that everyone knew the conclusion that was going to come out of a report if that was the goal. I think, Mr. Camella, you mentioned there's some creative ideas that you heard about this week. I don't know why you heard about them this week. There's just been a project going on for a long time, and I wish those creative ideas would have been discussed or somehow generated. It's disappointing to hear that I think the report was completed in December of 2024, and now we're hearing about some creative solutions that maybe could have been included in that report. In addition, the consultant that talked said you can't have stuff on the outskirts of town unless you annex it with a master plan. Was that ever considered as a possibility or a solution for this? I'm not sure if it was, but I think it's something that could be considered. Let's see. I think there's another thing too, and I understand that HCD has some strict requirements that we have to follow, but as I understand the housing element, there was about a 20% buffer on our RENA requirement. So if we did, for example, a 15% buffer, would we really need to replace 44 affordable units? I think we could probably get a little creative with our buffer and with our calculations and actually come up with a solution that would work. So I think there's some creative options there, and as everyone else said today, I would suggest that the council not accept this report and ask that we continue to look into some creative alternate solutions. I want to mention too, I think the threat of builder's remedy, that was the threat that we all heard of back when this was rezoned to high density. We understood the seriousness of that threat. I don't think that's a threat at the moment. We have a certified housing element. There's nothing that would cause us to be under builder's remedy by considering these creative options. And if we send a proposal and HCD doesn't like it, I don't know that we would be in builder's remedy automatically. We're still under an approved housing element. So we have the flexibility here to look into this without the threat of builder's remedy. So a couple people have said we can't do anything because of builder's remedy. I don't think that's correct. And then one final thing, and I know Mr. Anderson was getting a dig in, but in all seriousness, we saw the report on the visibility triangles. 299 parcels were assessed. We had the fire department and public works involved. They made posters apparently that we could have seen. Was the fire department or public works consulted on what a high density project would do in this community? I don't think they were, and it's just kind of disappointing that something as serious as a huge development didn't get the attention that visibility triangles did. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Good evening. My name is Michael Sweeney. I'm the property owner of 1191 Hudson Avenue. So I happen to be a lot line neighbor of the Quaglia parcel. And so the manner in which the city's conducted itself pertaining to the upzoning of the Quaglia parcel and clearing the way for the Spring Vineyard development project has been questionable from its inception. I need to call your attention to the hijinks associated to the providing adequate notice to the upzoning deliberations and decision-making, and you were taken to task over that and richly deserved it. I, for one, would love to see a competent and thorough analysis you could present us with that analyzes the change in the property tax base and consequent revenues over the long term in the wake of railroading citizens with the Spring Vineyard project. I'll go out on a limb and predict that the net effect will be overwhelmingly negative. You can try to counter by any rhetoric you want, but it's a simple fact. So congratulations. Between Spring Vineyard and Spring Grove projects, you've effectively nuked a wide swath of the west side, particularly on Spring from Oak all the way to Valley View. And it's clear that no one here has thought this through. You're willing to permanently deplete your coffers, degrade the city's quality of life and infrastructure for the sake of placating your state overlords and to the sole benefit of a for-profit developer who's providing home ownership and associated opportunities for capital appreciation to no one in this project. So please don't fool yourself. And so I look ahead, what lies ahead, and it continues to be a bitter pill to swallow. But if I had at least been told that a group of very deserving lower income families would be on the path to home ownership out of this, I could begin to reconcile myself to this project and take my medicine. However, that's not happening here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name's Corey Empting. I live at 1998 Spring Street with my wife Lisa and our 3 children, Jack, Sophia, and Henry.
Welcome.
Thank you. So live right across the street, obviously, but I've grown up in St. Helena my entire life. I've been here for more than 40 years. I work in the wine industry. I've seen this place grow and change in a lot of different ways, and sentimental to watch a lot of vineyards turn into housing developments, and I think they've each found their way to be incorporated in the community well. But this one just feels different, and I want to echo what was just said before. I think when we stood up here and everyone was in the last meeting over a year ago, nobody was against affordable housing. Everyone wanted to support that. Everyone wanted to find a creative way to make this happen. There's safety issues with this location. There's so much traffic. Anyone who lives in this town, and I'll repeat that, people that live in this town know the difference. You can't take a right out of our property for like 30 minutes every single morning and add 78 more units to it and imagine what that's like. So I think there's real concerns with this site. But I think more than that, I also was like, we're counting on the labor force in the future. We need people to be part of this community so it doesn't become the Las Vegas and the laughingstock of the wine industry. It needs to be authentic farming community with people that live in this town that work here. And I'm willing to swallow that pill if we were able to do that. But this project isn't doing that. This is making a wealthy person even wealthier, creating less affordable housing units than we said there was going to do, and let's find a creative solution that delivers what we actually want to do for this community. So I know there's no decision to be made today, but I think everyone around this table, I know you guys care at a certain extent, and if you live in this community, like I've lived in it for 40 years and I plan to die here, we're going to live with the consequences of these decisions. And some of us will move on and go to another city and live out the rest of their life somewhere else and not live down the consequences. But the rest of us are going to be stuck here with diminished property values, without the affordable housing, and all the other consequences that are made as a decision here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter. My name's Cameron Krebs. My wife, Michelle, and I live at 1346 Sylvana Avenue with our 3 boys. Like Corey, I've lived here, grew up here for over 40 years. And it's perplexing to me that we're at this juncture. This town is filled with a lot of bright, smart, creative people. And I think the statement needs to be made that this is our town. It's not Sacramento's town. It's our town. And at the end of the day, while the council might not be able to have an action today to accept or decline this report, I do think that the council has a lot of opportunities in the near future to say no to this project and to put the city staff back at task and to actually take ownership as council members to be part of the process this time, to really work with the state to find reasonable and actual affordable housing sites. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I mean, everyone's talked about the irony of this project. Someone's going to be making tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars off this project, and we're going to get 15 affordable units out of it. That's ridiculous. So I urge the council to really think about this process as the application comes in and then as the application keeps going. And there were some parts of the staff or the report presented today that points out a lot of things that I think do have some major issues with this site and with other sites within the West Side. That simply just saying it has to be on the West Side, well, that's a pretty obtuse statement. Again, this is our town, not Sacramento's. And if we're going to achieve these housing numbers, we need to work collaboratively to get them done and also think about the bigger piece of creating community forever. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mike Anderson. I'm at 1106 Valley View. I come up here as a product of low-income housing. It's something that I utilized when I moved back to this valley.
something that allowed me to get on my feet, build my own place. I'm all for it. It's something that I think is incredibly useful, something that probably many cities in this county could use more of. That being said, I think, I could echo a lot of what has been said here already tonight. I'll start with, going back to a year ago when we started this and a lot of the work that, David had done and the kind of the builder's remedy boogeyman that I think that we're up against at that time. And I think, decisions were made to try and alleviate that. And numbers have surely changed at this point, but it was my understanding, close to a year ago, if not more recently, that there were countless cities that were out of compliance, with HDC. And there were many that were potentially dealing with this builder's remedy issue. I'm sure, again, the numbers have changed. I'm sure there are still many communities that are up against this. I'm sure that they are trying to find ways out or around or through this with Sacramento, much like we are here today. And I think that that's something that might be an avenue to explore. Working out with some of these other communities, trying to figure out what has worked for them, trying to find other alternatives to be creative in some way, shape, or form. If I'm not mistaken, I think this has happened as well, that there have been challenges to the HDC and to Builder's Remedy and communities trying to actively prevent it while they're out of compliance. Obviously, that's probably not the easiest road. It's definitely not the path of least resistance, of course. But if push comes to shove, and we don't want this to be Sacramento's town, we want it to be our town, as was echoed or said, maybe a push does deserve a shove sometimes, within reason, of course. Not to totally railroad the comments earlier of, more talk and listening and less violence, as you said, at the height of the meeting or the beginning of the meeting here today. So I think that this is something that I think a lot has been said. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Welcome. Hi, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm Linda Reef. I live across the street from the Qualia Vineyard. Thank you very much for bringing this report to the public. It's something I asked at your study session back on August 19th because it's something that had not been completed back when the vote was made in April to upzone the parcel. There have been a lot of really great comments this evening, and I look forward to hearing the City Council members' comments, so I'm going to shorten up what I said. I don't need to reiterate things. Except that I love the creative ideas and the energy. And actually, Mr. Mayor, you commented in the previous agenda item how much talent there is in this city and how many people I think are willing to dig in and get involved if you would allow us to be a part of figuring out a solution. And again, there were so many great ideas. I do want to point out one thing that has not been noted, and that is that the vote on April 23rd, 2024, where the previous city council upzoned the property, was a conditional approval. Part of it included directing the staff to go back to the state to work on rezoning this to medium and to find alternative sites. So I'd actually call into question that action on April 23rd because that has never been corrected. So I just wanted to point that out. But again, I want to say that the city manager back at that April meeting did acknowledge that that process was completely flawed, and he apologized, and I accept that apology. This process now on this study of alternative sites has also been flawed. I mean, to look at the cemetery as one of the sites, who is going to build houses on top of graves? Another site, the elementary school playing fields, nobody wants to do that. This is a flawed report, so I respectfully ask that we not come and have another apology for something that's wrong, but let's fix it, and I'm willing to volunteer my time to help on that. Thank you. All right. Let me bring it back to the council. I'll close the public comment and first of all give I don't know if our staff wants to make any comments. There's a lot that was said. Any bright shining lights of opportunity for this council, Mr. Mello or Mr. Rosa? If not, it would be nice to sort of let folks know that we heard you. There's a lot of information, a lot of good ideas. I'm committed to continuing to do the work. I am a little troubled that there's an application on file, and I think the lawyers in the room may have some differences of opinion about what that means. I certainly am troubled by that in terms of our options, but I am committed, as I said I was when this issue first came up, to working with the state, working with you, and trying to be as creative as possible. I wasn't sure who was on the committee, the input committee. I was not. I don't know how many of you in the room were actually on that input committee. One? Okay. Let me turn to Mr. Rosa, and there may be some more there, but I'm intrigued by that. I didn't follow the input committee, and there may be some room to talk more about that to make sure we continue to get it, to improve, put it that way mildly. Mr. Rosa.
The main thing that I think came up as a possible solution is, I think it was Michelle Covell had mentioned, Piedmont is switching gears and focusing on ADUs. And she is correct that ADUs do count towards RENA credit, but I would caution, so our just to set the framework, HCD certified our housing and got us out of builder's remedy because we committed to a framework of how we were going to deliver affordable housing across 4 income categories and across certain sites in meeting the affirmatively furthering fair housing, which was the whole discussion of the east side versus the west side. I think Ryan did a very good job taking a very complex puzzle and challenge of trying to fit, the pegs and square holes of how do we try and find this when we have such tight, narrow margins of how we try and find a solution to Site 10. So we basically, it's not as easy as ADUs, but on the good side, every time an ADU building permit comes in, we do get to count that on the APR report that you see each year. So I just wanted to clarify that that's not necessarily the silver bullet solution. And I don't know if our city attorney has anything that he would like to offer, but I just wanted to clarify that one comment.
All right, thank you for that. So yeah, I think the builder's remedy, the state of the application, what that allows us to do going forward. I don't want to. One of the things people hear me talk about all the time, probably Mr. Camello more often than not, is managing expectations in the community. I want to make sure that when we say something that we can deliver, and so I have a lot of legal reservations about what we can do, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Walsh just in a high level position given the state of Site 10 right now and the application on file.
Okay, well, there's a couple different things, I guess. One is, you mentioned builder's remedy. Mm-hmm. We currently have a certified housing element, so builder's remedy is not a risk. At the time a year ago when we were going through the process of rezoning the site, at that point we did not have a compliant housing element because we had taken too long to rezone that site, and so there was a risk at that point. That doesn't exist today. We can have conversations with HCD or whomever about amendments to the housing element. If they were amenable to that, then we would have to reopen the process and go through that again to update it. Our existing housing element would stay in place until it was updated, and then potentially there could be a change to that site, right? So that's a process that we could go through. In terms of the site at the moment, you're correct, Mayor. We do have a preliminary application in, and there's a relatively new process in state law where you can submit a preliminary application, and then upon submission of that, it essentially vests your rights to the zoning that's in place at the time you submit it, assuming that your application moves forward. And so with that application being submitted, the developer of the property has those rights vested should they go forward with their project. So ultimately, if they wanted to move forward with their project and in the intervening time we rezoned the site, they would still have the rights to the existing zoning, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Now, like I said, I don't want to presume anything. The staff is reviewing that application right now. They have to make sure that it's compliant with all our objective standards, and make a determination as to whether or not it's able to be approved. But it is a situation where, because of the new the new housing laws, that doesn't come back to council. That's approved at a staff level if it is compliant. If it's not compliant, it gets rejected. So, so that I would say if this does move forward, it does limit some of our options as to kind of course correct right away. I know it's a complex area of the law. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have some in response to that.
Not at the moment. Thank you for that those general observations about the status of that. Comments or questions from my colleagues? Any brilliant ideas? Lights of opportunity, Mr. Barrick?
I don't know about brilliant.
You're a brilliant man, of course.
Well, thank you.
I always look to you.
I'd like for staff and our legal team to take another look and kind of expand, kind of find a way. Right, if I'm hiring a law firm in my private life, I'm going against another law firm that tells me that I'm going to lose, but that's not always what happens. That's why there's lawyers on both sides. There could be options, creative options of, again, buying the property, even the city. I know our financial situation, but we have other assets, potentially buying the property, potentially the residents around town pooling money with the city, all types of different public, private financing. And what if we were to buy out, for instance, the developer, what then are our options, right? You've already explained that the Rubicon has been crossed as far as downzoning it because this developer has the rights to high density, from what I understand your comments. But if we buy them out, what does that look like for us, and how creative can we get? And that's just one idea. Might not work. I'm sure there's a lot of problems with it, but I think if we can approach things with a can-do mindset and put the energy in and come back to make sure there's no stones unturned, I think that'd make me feel better. Not that that's the goal, but it would.
Right. So, yeah. So clearly, if you bought the property, then you would control it, right? And so you control the timing as to what happens, and you have more options. You can take more time because there's not a pending application. There's, as a city, we have different functions, right? When we're talking about housing, we're in a regulatory kind of reactive phase where we're essentially just looking at, is this compliant with our requirements? Is it compliant with state requirements? And we're being reactive. If we purchase the property and we own it, then we can decide what we do with it. Some of the people who spoke today mentioned that the proposal is for only, for market rate with 15 affordable units, and that's allowed under the housing element law. There's not a requirement that they have to build to the 44 and 44. But if we controlled the property, then we could potentially partner with people for a development that was providing for more affordable units on the site. I have no idea at this point how much it would cost either to purchase the property or to move forward with an actual affordable development, but you would have a lot more options and you would have additional time if you took that step.
Thank you. So I think those are the type of, and I'm sure there's more, there's a lot of smart people in the community, smart people on council and on staff. It'd be good to decamp and discuss the possibility of these things. We do have assets that can be sold. I know it's kind of the devil's bargain, right? I know Adams has mentioned, Main Streets has mentioned, we know the passions around both of those properties, but there could be something we could do here, right? A property for a property and make something potentially more copacetic for the folks in the community, right? And get potentially more affordable housing. I don't have all the details. This is somewhat just talking out loud, about one idea. But it'd be good to get a group together and have the city come together and see what else is possible, what gives us the most flexibility potentially, and then how much time we have to do it. This has taken some time. It's complicated from April to today, but we have to look forward. We can't do anything about the past. So what can we do now? And start moving on it. That's my thoughts.
Ms. Patarotto.
So I have a question regarding, I guess, the zoning. This is kind of a clarifying question, I guess. So we're not under the builder's remedy, correct? So would this then apply objective standards, correct? Is that what so could this technically go kind of like under general plan?
Are you talking about the proposed development?
Correct, so the zoning. So right now, they were talking about this switching it back down to being medium density as opposed to high density.
So, sorry, and so what, and if you could restate the question?
So I was just saying, because this is technically not, this is now not builders, we're now under our own, right, standard, objective standard, correct?
The by right issue, I think, is what you're getting at versus high density,
Okay.
going back to medium density
Yes.
and other
Yeah.
zoning.
Yeah. So the by right actually doesn't really have anything to do with the zoning per se. It's more the fact of what type, and this touches a little bit on the presentation we had on the 19th of August from Barbara Kotz. So the by right is what kind of project are they proposing? And actually the Spring Grove versus the Spring Vineyard is a good example. The developer of Spring Grove is subdividing. So he's immediately needs a subdivision, which triggers a discretionary action and triggers CEQA. So that is no longer a by right project. If, in fact, though, he had instead said, no, I want to make it all rental and I don't want to subdivide, and I am going to meet the objective standards in the zoning code, because both projects still have to do that for the design part. But that would, the by right would bypass Planning Commission and City Council review. So it's not so much a factor of what is it zoned, does it have a by right, it's more what's the intent of the developer, do they want to build a for sale development or do they want to have it be rental? And as long as they meet the objective design standards as a rental project, the Planning Commission, the council will not have any authority on it, and that's what we call a by right or a ministerial approval. Does that help?
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Deasy, thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of the comments. I just wanted to say first, this is a tough one. I do think we have a duty to promote affordable housing, but I also think we have a duty to preserve our agricultural roots. And I wanted to say that there is a really passionate crowd here, but I know from the campaign that there is also a passionate crowd about affordable housing. They may not be showing up to oppose this one, but they are out there. So in the spirit of we've got two somewhat contradictory efforts, I do think we want to do it as best we can, and so I wonder if we've tried hard enough to achieve both of those things. So I would be in support of exploring creative ideas. I can't imagine that would hurt, and I think we should give it our best effort. That is a beautiful vineyard out there. And I've also heard people talking, their morning walk, and I think it is what makes a town. I have a couple of questions. Are we engaging, has anyone taken the lead on engaging the developer to discuss style options or I don't know, anything? Is anyone, can we do that?
As far as this project is concerned, it's ministerial, but we've
Well, you
been
can still talk to
Yeah,
someone.
we've been
even
talking with them, yeah. Staff has been talking to them.
about trying to ensure that if this project goes forward, they might do something that isn't within what most neighbors would feel is in the character of the neighborhood?
don't want to get too much into talking about the project details because that's not really what the agenda item is, but the developer has had multiple conversations about what kind of projects should they do and what they want to do, but always they know that the bottom line of what's going to be evaluated by is consistency with the general plan and the zoning, and specifically the objective design standards. So that's the intent of the conversation. This is, the first I've heard of a conversation of the city buying the site, which of course hasn't transpired. I'm not sure if that's what you were directing or asking the city manager.
Here's what if I picked up the phone and called him? Is that illegal? Is that appropriate? Should we be doing that? Should we be not doing that? I don't know. No.
I mean, it's not illegal. Like, this isn't coming before you if it moves forward. So if you want to call the developer and talk to them, even if it was, you would still have the ability to talk to them. You wouldn't be able to, I mean, we've talked about the due process issues and everything, but that's not even an issue here because it doesn't come before you.
Okay, thank you. And I have lots of questions. They're probably better for another time, but I did want to ask about the ADU issue. Kind of specifically, it's about, I guess you could apply it to this. My understanding is that we didn't include the ADUs in the housing piece because we did a survey and found that ADUs were not really renting for affordable prices. Is that correct? Somewhat correct?
Our evaluation of the ADU permits is, we can't force people to create rental housing from them, and they have not compared to like Oakland and Santa Cruz, they have not been really delivering true new housing. So yes. That's
what I'm wondering, it's not my area of expertise, but two things. I was thinking that it was because there wasn't like historic data proving that they are affordable. And at the same time, I think we have really high, I don't know if it's water or wastewater hookups for those ADUs. So I wonder if we're shooting ourselves in the foot by potentially doing something we could for housing by having those high hookups, high costs. And I recognize that an ADUs would not be a silver bullet or a whole part of this this housing allocation, but it does seem to me that it could be really helpful. And I wonder if you could do things like financing assistance or deed restrictions or something like that. But we do have people who grow up in this town and would like to come back and can't afford to do so. Maybe the parents want to move into the ADU and a young family wants to move in and it becomes affordable. I just am really interested in how that could. I also realize there are issues of equity, and so it would not be the entire piece of maybe they become city employees. They grew up here and then they want to come work for the city. No, I'm interested in how the ADUs might be a part of all this. That's all.
Other comments? Ms. Badarotto.
Just one other question. I know, and I want to thank Linda Reef for this. We had a little conversation, and she mentioned to me that there was the possibility of potentially splitting up this necessity. Have we looked into having so many units in one place and then so many units in a different place so that it's not necessarily all in one sector? It doesn't all have to be necessarily off of Spring Street. We could maybe use different, behind the Umka Bank and Spring Street property.
Yeah, I think you're affirming what part of what we were trying to say is that we don't have to solve the Site 10 all on one parcel if there's multiple sites, but as long as it still meets the criteria of on the west side and those other criteria that we shared.
We're to receive the report, but I'm wanting to know whether there's any general consensus about continuing to explore creative ideas. It's a very general topic. Mr. Mello, what do you think? I don't know if it would help if I knocked on the door or made a phone call to the developer. I don't know how that plays. I don't know who the developer is. I don't have a personal relationship with the developer. It seems a little, I think we're at a point where we have to try all matters. The notion of purchasing the property is intriguing. It's complicated, as most things are in our city where we're struggling to a certain degree financially. Again, managing expectations, so that's a hard, long process. And it's not going to, we're not able to say, developer, you have to stop. Obviously, we can't do that, right? So we have to understand that that's sort of the downside of this, that we continue forward with no assurances unless we can do something that's intriguing to a developer. I'm happy to have those conversations. I don't know what I can add to it. I know folks look to the mayor to sort of drive the issue. I was honestly a little disappointed in some of the properties that were selected, but that is what it is, and I don't know if there are others. I have not heard any others that are off that list that are potential, and open to having conversations with others, other than the 16. The 3 that the input committee came up with seem a little, obviously they had constraints. I don't know if there are others. Folks have talked about the west side versus east side. It's fairly clear the HCD is looking for the west side. We have a history here. Unfortunately, St. Helena is on the radar screen heavily by HCD, so I know that, and that's been that way for many, many years. So they're going to scrutinize everything. I don't know, what do you think, Mr. Camillo? You're an entrepreneurial spirited person, and I don't know if my involvement will help or hurt the cause. I'm a policymaker. We're all policymakers. But you and your staff need a little bit more direction, so it's not open-ended, and I'm struggling to figure out what that direction is, unless my council members could maybe help me here a little bit more. Mr. Camillo.
A couple of things, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I appreciate your comment about setting in expectations and not and wanting to be clear about it, because this is a tough area of the law, and HCD, as I think we have heard time and time again, has been really top down, and that's why it has gotten the reaction it has from around the state. I also want to clarify that when I made a comment earlier about creativity, I meant the community, not just the city, because frankly, government is not known for its creativity. This is not what we do. We know how to meet and comply with laws that come from on high. And so that's what we did. In this case, we hired a consultant to give us that analysis, independent analysis, and you heard his presentation. My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, if you want to entertain that, is to have one member of the council. I'm not saying it should be you, anybody on the council. He's pointing at you, just so you know. Along with, I think we had some couple of volunteers. I think Linda Reeves, I think she's still here. Thank you. And we have a couple other people who are willing to work with us, and I'll volunteer myself. We'll be happy. I mean, I suggest that a small group of people have some honest conversations about what's possible. I also want to say that, without going into a whole lot of detail, there are some risks associated with, city owning, purchasing properties, and yes, it's viable potentially, but we need to be very, very careful about going down that path. We can facilitate certain actions that would get to the same conclusion, but we are, as a city, as an entity, will be a lot more scrutinized by HCD than if the same actions be taken by private actors. So I just want to put that as a reality check there. So that's what my recommendation would be, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I think Mr. Barrick would be important. You said one other person. My preference would be to be involved in this process, if that is okay with the council. To work with whoever else. I know that Mr. Barrick volunteered, so. Is that okay with the council? I think it to the point where the mayor has to be involved in this. I have to get more detail, and I want to work with those who've raised their hand. I'll leave it to staff to organize those folks. Contact Maya or somebody, and we'll start talking about creative ideas. I didn't give you a chance to talk, but Ms. Bridar, I want to talk to you about what happened with not now, but at some point about where we can improve there and where there's some avenues of opportunity. So
If I can just ask those that wanted to be actively involved, if you can give either Erica or Director DeRosa your name and contact information, I'd greatly appreciate it.
All right. Again, I'm not going to promise anything other than to work hard on the issue, try to get more involved, get more information, try to maybe get an understanding of what the developer has in mind, and we'll go from there. All right. Thank you all. All right. So we've come to the end. Item 14. Any of my council members wanting to give a report on any of their out of city work?
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I will next time.
All right, thank you. Anything from you, Vice Mayor Deasy? All right. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. Bye, enjoying your life. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you.